I'm Crystal Graham. I'm joined by AFP editor Chris Graham. We're talking a little bit about a story that appeared on Augusta Free Press this week about a family of a man who died in police custody who wants answers as to what happened. This involved the Augusta County Sheriff's Office, a man who was arrested at Augusta Health for public intoxication on May 5th and ended up basically dead on arrival in the deputy's car. There's a lot of questions from the family. Chris, I know that you've been back and forth with some family friends and that kind of thing. Maybe you could tell us a little bit more.
Well, Crystal, you mentioned you reported first on this back on May 5th. The man in question who died, Stephen Garenser, 39, of Stanton. He's only been recently living in the Stanton area, from North Chesterfield, much more recently. He died on May 5th, as you mentioned. There were a series of things that happened the early morning hours of May 5th. That was Monday of last week as we're recording, where he originally there was a call from the Fishersville Sheets saying that Mr. Garenser had refused to leave the premises. Nothing given as to what had led to a request for him to leave the premises, but that was around 3:30 on the morning of May 5th. Sheriff's deputies responded to the scene. Then around 4:18, there was a call actually from Mr. Garenser himself requesting aid because of some issues. We really don't know the nature of that. When that call was responded to, he refused to be transported by emergency personnel, but he did agree to be taken by a sheriff's deputy. He then refused treatment at Augusta Health. Augusta Health called, as you mentioned, security there was dealing with him around. It was 5:18 a.m. when a call was made to 911, and when police responded, there was a altercation of some sort, a scuffle of some sort, there at the scene at Augusta Health, with the call again being logged, and the response being logged at 5:18. Between 5:18 then and 5:45 a.m., as there was a period of time there where the deputy, whose name has not been released, would have been taking Mr. Garenser from Augusta Health in Fishersville, getting on the interstate 6481 up to the interstate exit there, the second Stanton interstate exit, to go to Middle River Regional Jail. It's a pretty quick trip. But at 5:45 a.m., then the sheriff's deputy was getting ready to unload Mr. Garenser from the vehicle, found him not breathing, unresponsive, and life-saving measures were attempted but not successful. So, really between a 2 hour period, roughly, roughly between 3:30 a.m. and 5:45 a.m. on Monday, May 5th, all this happened, where originally a call from Sheets, there was something in between where he called 911 himself, whatever happened at the hospital, and then 5:45 a.m. he's dead. He's 39 years old. Crystal, you and I, when you first reported on this, and we were working, as a writer editor team on this, we had questions. I mean, I don't think there's any doubt that you and I had questions about this, and so it's not a surprise that here we are, 10, 11 days later, still asking very serious questions about what happened to that man in that 2 hour period, especially the 27-minute period between the Augusta Health incident
Well,
and Middle River Regional Jail.
and in that brief struggle, that was the word that the sheriff's office used that happened at Augusta Health. I certainly can understand why the family wants answers to this, and if they get stonewalled kind of the way that we did when we did some follow up this week to try to get some answers as to what happened during this brief struggle. Again, from my understanding, an Augusta Health security official was involved, as well as this sheriff's deputy that was involved. Was it something that happened with the brief struggle, or something else related to, if it was public intoxication or the person was on some kind of a drug? Could that have played a factor? The truth is, we don't know a lot, and the sheriff's office isn't answering any more questions. They've referred this to Virginia State Police. Virginia State Police got back to us this week and basically just said the investigation is ongoing, and therefore they're not willing to make any kind of comment as to what's happening. I reached out also to the medical examiner's office in Richmond to see if there was any kind of report available. That's where bodies are typically sent, and especially in cases of murder or when foul play is suspected. And even send a request in through the Freedom of Information Act, and I was told basically that there's an exception and that this information is not available to us as journalists or the public or anything else. I reached out to Augusta Health to see if the employee had perhaps been disciplined in any way, or if they were just on leave temporarily while this investigation was ongoing. Augusta Health spokesperson basically said that the security employees are not technically employees of Augusta Health, and that, to her knowledge, no employee is no employee or no third party is under investigation related to this matter. So it seems that whatever did happen likely falls to the deputy. I reached out to the sheriff's office again, Chris, to find out if perhaps the deputy in question was on leave. We get news releases all the time. And typically when the Virginia State Police is involved in any kind of like an officer involved shooting or anything where an officer and someone end up dead, right? That the Virginia State Police, typically the protocol is to put that person on leave temporarily while the investigation is ongoing. Sometimes they're just sent to desk duty or something like that during that time. I can't even get answers about something as simple as that. And like you said, we certainly, the family has said that they tried to get video, dash cam or, body camera footage, and that's also been denied. So I can't imagine being in their shoes. And it feels like, Chris, even though we're trying to follow up on this as well, that, I can understand their frustration, because there's frustration on our part that we can't get anybody to tell us anything.
Well, and so yeah, the part of the story then where the family and close friends reached out to us. Wade Garancer, his older brother, Stephen Garancer's older brother, had posted to a private Facebook group, and then a close family friend, a guy named Gary Bone, reached out to us. Gary said that he served in the Marine Corps with both the Garancer brothers. And he brought this to our attention just at so it's one thing for I can understand the media and the public not being given information. Maybe I can understand that, but even the families being stonewalled, as you mentioned. Here's some of the quotes from Wade Garancer in his private Facebook messaging. He said, quote, "There is real injustice here. I truly feel like Stefan was assaulted to the point of his death." More from Wade Garancer than he says he was a handicapped, mentally ill patient at a Sheets at 3:30 in the morning in handcuffs and under custody. He dies in the back of a squad car at the police station. All I want is for people to read this message, he said, and maybe gain some insight or help out, but something is awry here. He went on to write, "It is unbelievable the amount of work and the amount of hours, literally hours, I spent on the phone having to call the police department back to get some form of information, which ultimately results in me calling another number to leave another voicemail again." So, I mean, if this is your loved one, if this is, your friend, whatever the case may be, and we're 11 days past whatever happening here, and you're leaving voicemails, you're being, just like, and we've experienced it ourselves, and it's not our loved one, but as you mentioned, Crystal, you reached out first to the sheriff's office. They tell you to contact the state police. State police says no comment, so you reach out to the health department, and the office of medical examiner. Nothing there. Augusta Health says nothing. I mean, a guy died in the back of a police car.
Well,
Something
and I'm just
happened.
going to bring up too, Chris. Yeah, obviously, there's a lot of question marks regarding this, right? And there's already a lot of public distrust sometimes of police, and so this kind of thing only fuels that a little bit more. But the other thing that this friend of the family brought up was the aspect of mental health, and his brother himself mentioned mentally ill at Sheets. When you bring that into the equation, you think of things like, there are crisis response teams in many areas that respond to situations like this instead of police, to try to de-escalate things. And it sounds like, there was an entire series of events that mostly involved police officers, and maybe that police officer, that deputy, was trained in some kind of crisis training or that kind of thing, and maybe not. We don't know because they haven't released the name of the officer or any information surrounding the incident. But in many areas, and Augusta County, Stanton, and Waynesboro has been working with Valley Community Services Board on this kind of a response. The problem that I've been told from Valley Community Services Board is staffing these. They have equipment that came from the state. They've got a mobile response unit that's ready to go, but they don't have the mental health employees. That's apparently very hard to come by, and you just don't know what these salaries and things like that are either for something that's obviously I guess I would like to say a difficult job to do, responding to crisis all the time, or behavioral health issues or things of that nature. And we don't know that if a crisis response team had, gone to the home, actually, I guess they haven't given the address of where that other call came in, when the individual himself, Mr. Garenser, called them. So you don't know if the response would have been any different, but of course, always having mental health professionals who deal with, people who are mentally ill every single day, there perhaps could have been a different outcome. We don't know any circumstances. We don't know if the person died of natural causes. We don't know if they died, as the family says, maybe of some kind of an assault, and we certainly don't know if there was any kind of drugs or alcohol involved in the situation. And it is frustrating. As frustrating as a journalist, I can't imagine being in his brother's shoes right now.
So we can conclude here, I suppose. I mean, we're still following the story, obviously. We've got those requests out. We'll put more out. We're going to keep in touch with the family. Wade Garenser, his older brother, again, has been, at this point, all we can do as journalists is not let this story get swept under the rug. And so we're going to continue to, try to press the issue there. I don't know that we're going to be successful, but the family's going to do the same thing. I understand from Gary Bone, the friend of the family, the friend of the Garenser brothers, that the family is working on getting an attorney to work on their behalf. I don't know that an attorney is going to be any more successful in getting answers, but we have to hope for their sake. I mean, and so, yeah, we don't know what happened. We're not trying to cast any aspersions here on anybody. We don't know what happened. Crystal, you laid it out there. It could have been a number of things that happened in between, the 5:18 a.m. and 5:45 a.m. Time frame there. But the family deserves answers. The public deserves answers. And
Well,
so
and it does seem like just classifying it as a brief struggle is not enough. I mean, there should have been some details provided, even if there is an investigation, even if they're waiting on the autopsy and the results of that. It's like you said, it's been 10 or 11 days now. We've had plenty of time for them to process that information and at least give us some kind of preliminary information as to what have might happen. I think of the Crozet shooting in Albemarle County and how the police chief there provided information very quickly as far as the timeline and what happened. And I feel like here, again, the sheriff's office is pushing this off on the state police, but it seems like we should get some answers.
I
So we'll
will.
stay on top of it for sure.
I will throw one more thought in. I've covered some other stories involving the Augusta County Sheriff's Office. One comes to mind: a sheriff's deputy who was accused of, eventually charged with assault in a case where there was a multi-jurisdictional pursuit that started in Augusta County, ended up in Albemarle County, and the state police got involved, handled the investigation, gave a recommendation from its investigation to the Albemarle County Commonwealth's attorney, who then decided to bring charges. So, in this case, everything happened within one jurisdiction. So, I guess what I'd say there is, I know there are going to be people who are watching this, listening to us right now, saying, "Well, of course, the police are going to exonerate the police because that's what police do." Even though it's state police and sheriff's office, they all work together. In that case, the state police did recommend that charges be brought against a sheriff's deputy. Now, there was a separate Commonwealth's attorney than our Augusta County Commonwealth's attorney involved. I guess what I'd say is we would probably, in this kind of a case, if something comes to fruition to that end, where a recommendation would be maybe charges are merited in this case. We would need the appointment of a special prosecutor outside of Augusta County, outside of Tim Martin, the Augusta County Commonwealth's attorney. Not to say that he would be biased, but just in these cases, that's common. So, But I want to say I have a little faith that the state police will handle this investigation. And they have recent evidence. We have recent evidence that says that they will handle this investigation as an independent agency, and if charges are merited, they will. I don't think that they'll hesitate to recommend charges be brought.
Right. And for people who don't know, that's typically how things happen. The Virginia State Police will, they'll file their report, but it goes to the Commonwealth's Attorney's Office, and that's where charges are either, made or not made. Sometimes it goes before, I guess, a grand jury to make some kind of decisions about indictments and things of that nature. That can play out for a considerable amount of time. Again, I think we're just looking for basic information at that point, and it's got to be very frustrating. It is frustrating, not to have that. So, something definitely to stay on top of. Well, by talking just now, Chris, it makes me realize that maybe we should reach out to the Commonwealth's attorney and see if they have any information right now. I know it's probably another wall, but another avenue to explore, I guess, that we haven't done so yet.
Probably another no comment, but I mean, yeah, thinking out loud. I mean, I think we need to probably get some sort of on the record declaration from the Commonwealth Attorney's Office that that Tim Martin, the Commonwealth Attorney here, will recuse himself and maybe ask for a special prosecutor to be looked at in this case. So yeah, there's still some more work to do on our part here. And again, all we're trying to do is get an answer for the family and for the public.
All right. So for Augusta Free Press, Chris Graham, we're going to wrap this story up, but you can continue to follow our coverage on AugustaFreePress.com. Crystal Graham, joined by AFP editor Chris Graham, breaking down a story that hasn't got a lot of comment from those involved right now. Chris, the Augusta County Sheriff Donald Smith is being sued by a former deputy related to a forced resignation. The news about this, the suit, all that information was released this week. Donald Smith so far has given no comment on the pending lawsuit against him, which seeks not only damages related to his termination, the former deputy Dennis Reynolds, but it also seeks punitive damages directly from Donald Smith himself, saying in part that law enforcement officers must be held to the highest standard. Chris, you broke down this suit. It was not an easy one. It was very lengthy, but I know that you kind of went through it with a fine-tooth comb. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about it.
All right, get yourself some popcorn here. Maybe make yourself a meal. There's a lot in this story, and so Crystal, feel free to break in when you need to. But yeah, this I recommend that people take the allegations in this with a grain of salt, just because this is a story that's been peddled to me for the last couple of years, and I'll go into that in a second too. But the suit is styled Reynolds v. Smith, Dennis Reynolds, former sheriff's deputy, versus Donald Smith, the current sheriff. It was filed in federal court in the Harrisonburg Division of the U.S. Court for the Western District of Virginia this week, as you mentioned there. There. The reason I say take it with a grain of salt is I know some of the folks who are involved around the periphery of the story. Donald Smith has been a target of a certain number of folks for political reasons for the last 10 years, basically ever since he won his sheriff's job in 2015. There may be merit to the suit. I'm not saying that there isn't. The suit itself alleges, quote, a disturbing pattern of constitutional and statutory violations, including disability discrimination, retaliation, defamation, and sexual harassment. Um, we did reach out to Donald Smith for comment, as is, it's not unexpected that, a person who's been filed, who's been, named in a 109-page lawsuit, would not offer comment, publicly, especially right after it was filed. Really, probably any time leading up to potential, not only the discovery process, but then, the eventual hearings, if there are such in court, just because you don't want to put anything on the record that could, hurt your case down the line. So I'm not, I'm not reading lack of transparency into the lack of a response. The attorney in this case is a guy from Charlottesville named Elliot Harding. Elliot is a UVA graduate, also a Washington Lee School of Law graduate. He has a political background. He worked on the staff of the former 5th District Congressman Tom Garrett for the one term Tom Garrett was in office. Harding also ran as independent against Democratic State Senator Creed Deeds back in 2019. His name got some Google mention. Harding's name, that is, that campaign. He was caught on a doorbell camera late in that campaign, late in October of that year, caught taking Deed's campaign materials from the homes of several residents of Western Albemarle County, Crozet area. So I mean, I had to mention that. I mean, if you want to mention that there's a lawsuit, you got to mention a lawyer. You got to kind of bring that kind of stuff up.
Yeah, and I was going to say too, Chris, the I had a paralegal and I were having dinner earlier this week, and one thing she mentioned to me was, of course, it's not going to be an Augusta County attorney that takes this case. So he is based in Charlottesville, which was her first guess as to someone who might take the case. I thought maybe, Chris, though, we could also talk about Dennis Reynolds and how his name kind of first came on our radar, because we've written about him before, not in relation to this lawsuit, but basically he was a canine officer with the Augusta County Sheriff's Office. And I guess the sheriff's office had allowed him to construct a carport at his personal residence just to help with his trained police dog. The dog's name was Rico. And when Reynolds resigned from the sheriff's office, now he says under duress, basically Smith then sent him an invoice for more than $3,000 for the cost of the carport. I remember the brouhaha that came up related to that. People were very angry that the sheriff's department was now demanding funds. The sheriff's department, on the flip side, was saying, hey, we spend the public's money. We have to, do so in a good manner. And so that's the reason that we're asking for these funds. It eventually got resolved. I think the Virginia Police, like Canine Association, stepped up, paid for the carport. And then that was really the last that we had heard about Dennis Reynolds until now.
What's interesting too, Crystal, then is that I'm reading through I get the press release from the lawyer in this case, Elliot Harding, and I'm reading through the 109-page legal brief filed in federal court, and there's nothing in the suit that mentions the carport thing, like even in passing, like say this is something that happened. I made the connection just because I wrote the story about Dennis Reynolds 2 years ago, and I'm thinking, well, and I didn't immediately recognize the name, but I remember thinking, oh, I wonder if that's connected there in any way, and of course it is. Yeah, so the story with Dennis Reynolds then goes back a little further than 2023. 2021, Dennis Reynolds' brother Robert Reynolds was involved in a one-car traffic accident. How this all plays, this will be part of the story. Dennis Reynolds contacted, according to his own suit, the Augusta County Emergency Communications Center to ask the ECC to not call the state police about that one-car accident involving his brother. That led to an internal sheriff's investigation into whether or not the call constituted obstruction of justice. That in turn led to a state police investigation. Now, this is where that little tidbit from 2021 is the story of everything else. The Virginia State Police investigation did not ultimately lead to charges against Dennis Reynolds. But in the course of the investigation, Reynolds alleges in his suit that Smith, the sheriff, instructed him to, quote, delete evidence that might be subject to the investigation and potential search warrant, which, according to the suit, again quoting now, included numerous inappropriate and salacious text messages that defendant Smith had sent to plaintiff, suggesting an additional motive for defendant Smith to want these communications destroyed. This is where things get interesting, Crystal. How much do
Well, because it says that, Chris, reading your story, there were over 1,100 text messages between Smith and Reynolds, and over, I guess, 107 conversation, it says, during the same period. And it said it was an unusual supervisor subordinate relationship. And I'm going to let you break down the allegations beyond that.
Unusual is a word, yeah. So quoting the lawsuit, defendant sent numerous unprofessional and sexually suggestive messages to plaintiff. These included, according to the suit, comments about the size of plaintiff's genitalia, statements that he would come cuddle within quotes, offers for plaintiff to stay at defendant's house in Churchville. Defendant repeatedly told plaintiff he loved him and wanted him quote, close. So I mean, you can't get more salacious than that. On top of that, then there was a scary health issue for Reynolds. He had a tumor basically at the base of his spine that was causing immense pain. Um, and there was then even more issues than related to that in regards to their inappropriate relationship, as has been
Right.
suggested in the suit.
Right. And without a lot of specifics, I do remember this, as you said, there's a group kind of behind that has peddled a similar story to you before, because I remember, if I recall, that there was an incident where there was a gentleman that was in police custody in Harrisonburg or Rockingham County. And I remember that someone tried to say that there was a relationship between Smith and this individual as well, like an
Male
inappropriate
individual, yes,
relationship of
yes.
some kind. So anyway, we didn't write about that story then. We probably wouldn't have written about this again, except, as you said, when the lawsuit is basically dropped in your lap. And what we're reading here, of course, is all allegations. This is all directly from the lawsuit. This is all things that Dennis Reynolds and his lawyer claim. It'll ultimately be played out in court. But so you mentioned the fact that that Dennis Reynolds had a health issue, and that there were some interesting text messages back and forth, according to Reynolds, related to that. What else did you learn when reading that suit? Because I know it was 109 pages, and it was a lot to digest in a short period of time.
Yeah, and I'm trying to like boil it down as much as possible. I did in the story, which is on AugustaFreePress.com, and here on this video and this podcast. So I'm left to question what happened in their personal relationship that led to a change in attitude from the sheriff, because from quoting from the lawsuit, quote, plaintiff requested additional time off in early May 2023 to address physical and mental health needs related to both the tumor and then the stress from having to deal with the health issues of the tumor. But he was denied due to alleged staffing needs, the suit says. Reynolds was later suspended from his job after refusing to sign disciplinary letters related to him taking mental health days. So after basically he was refused the additional time off, he just took sick days. And then an issue was raised with him taking sick days. Uh, so he was given disciplinary letters to sign, refused to do so. He was handed a decertification letter rehashing the allegations dating to that 2021 incident for which he'd been cleared, according to the suit. Um, so he was ultimately forced to resign in July of 2023 under duress, he says in the suit, quote, as he was faced with the choice of resigning or being formally terminated for alleged policy violations that were directly related to his use of sick leave for mental health purposes. This is where things get confusing, because we'll find out that the suit alleges that Sheriff Smith, quote, submitted a notification of eligibility for decertification to the Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services, seeking to have plaintiff decertified as a law enforcement officer. So not only then was Reynolds not going to be eligible to work for the sheriff's office anymore, he couldn't get a job anywhere in Virginia, at least, because he was going to be decertified as a law enforcement officer.
Well,
Um,
and the mental health aspect, again, is that something that should really be made public? I mean, regardless, you think about, HIPAA laws and how they apply to your medical records and things of that nature. And police officers, oftentimes, if they show any sign that they have any kind of mental health issues, that can stick with them for a long period of time. It's the same kind of thing that happens in the nursing profession and some other military and things like that, where they just prefer not to talk about it. And of course, bringing that up and putting that as part of the reason to decertify him would certainly leave that with him for a period of time, even though, just like a health issue like he had encountered previously, that can be treated. And so it's always interesting to me as a mental health advocate, just how those things kind of play into employers and how they deal with health issues, because a mental health issue is a health issue. If you need to take time off for your mental health, I don't see any reason why you shouldn't be able to use sick days for that. So I think that there
especially
will
when you're a law
also, yeah,
especially
go
when
ahead.
you're a law enforcement officer, that's a stressful job. I mean, and so this is where I say Crystal Graham is a professional mental health person, because I did not write this in the story. That was though in the lawsuit a big section about how one of the reasons Reynolds was reticent to sign any paperwork was he felt like his HIPAA rights were being violated. So
But those things follow you too. It's the same reason that a lot of times, nurses and things of that nature, if they're going to get mental health treatment and it's going to be reported back for some reason, they just won't get the treatment, because they're afraid that that will follow them in their career and that it'll lead to some issue there. That happens a lot, like I said, in the military as well. Even if they're going for treatment, once they feel like they're flagged that they have mental health issues, it prevents them from getting future promotions and things of that nature. So I certainly can understand his hesitation to want to sign anything related to mental health. I feel like mental health and sickness, they're one and the same, like we all have days where, I even some days will tell you, Chris, I can't focus, like there's other things on my mind right now. I need to take a mental health day. And a lot of employers are starting to build those in, as far as having time off and that kind of thing for mental health days. Some people get one a month or one a quarter or something like that. I have a friend who takes them regularly, and sometimes it's just to, participate in a demonstration if she wants to do that because she feels like, hey, this is good for me and good for my mental health. So that is certainly another thing that comes into play here. And I think also too that even though ultimately Reynolds, came out victorious in this fact that he wasn't, his certification wasn't taken away. He feels like the sheriff has also prevented him from getting other potential jobs, which I'm sure again is part of the reason that the suit is so real because this he's certainly not at retirement age, right, Mr. Reynolds?
well,
So,
I'll correct you. You said the word victorious. He's not. He was
okay,
victorious in one
correct.
sense. The Virginia Department of Criminal Justice Services Board, 6 months later, so early 2024, sided with Reynolds unanimously to say that basically they were not going to approve a notification for eligibility for decertification. But Smith has, according to the suit, since worked to try to prevent Reynolds from getting other jobs in law enforcement. According to the suit, it seems like there was an outstanding offer from the Nelson County Sheriff's Office just over the mountain from us that was disrupted. The job offer was rescinded because Smith, according to the suit, sent one of these letters to the sheriff there to say that he shouldn't be employed by the sheriff's office over there. And so the suit says, quote, the decertification attempt has severely damaged plaintiff's professional reputation in the law enforcement community, making it difficult for him to secure comparable employment. So, Crystal, you mentioned earlier when we were starting talking about this, just about the damages that are being requested in the suit. $5 million in compensatory damages. Now, that would be basically county taxpayers paying whatever amount of money up to 5 million, maybe more. Who knows? What jury might decide, more or less. $350,000 also against Smith in what are would be called punitive damages based, quote, on his willful, wanton, and malicious violation of plaintiff's clearly established rights. Those rights including the right to sick days for mental health, as you've gone into great detail there.
Mhm.
And so,
Well, and I think the other part too is the reputational harm, right? And that was something that was pointed out in the news release. If he's not able to get another job, at least in this immediate area, is he going to be forced to relocate or go somewhere else if he wants to stay in the profession? So I think in a lot of ways, a lawsuit of this nature is one to compensate him for the fact that he hasn't worked in a couple of years now, that he's not able to get a job because he feels like Sheriff Smith is, for whatever reason, blocking him from getting additional employment through a reference or something of that nature. And then third, if he has to relocate to get a job in another state or something of that nature, there's cost involved with that as well. So it definitely feels like, in this case that, the Mr. Reynolds felt that he was very vulnerable, and he feels like now that future avenues of employment have been shut down for him.
no doubt. So we'll be, again, this is one side of the story, and it's a very detailed side of the story. And just to reinforce, the sheriff declining to comment does not, he's not conceding anything here. It's just what you do when you're faced with a public lawsuit of this nature. I don't know that he contacted a lawyer, but a good lawyer would tell you don't make a comment on this kind of thing. Like, wait till you get to court if it gets that far. So there is another side of the story. We don't know it yet. We may not know it. We won't know it until if and when this ever actually gets to trial. Who knows how things are going to be resolved here. It's not going to be anytime soon, certainly. But all that said, yeah, I mean, these allegations, again, I've been hearing the whispers about them, Crystal, for a couple of years. I heard about it contemporaneously. I mean, this was playing out as that carport story that we wrote about in July of 2023. That was sort of the tip of the iceberg to the rest of this story. Um, there's a lot here. I don't know what we're gonna ultimately find out, but this is definitely going to be something we'll be paying attention to the next few months, maybe the next couple of years.
Yeah, this could play out for a considerable amount of time. And like you said, there's always the possibility that, the county's insurer, that the county will choose, that they don't want this in the courts. And so that they'll make some kind of an offer just to settle this. But time will tell with that. As you said, these are all simply allegations. Continue to follow the story on AugustaFreePress.com. You can always click on the tags at the bottom of the story. There's one for the Augusta County Sheriff's Office or Augusta County if you want to specifically hone in on those two subjects. For Augusta Free Press, I'll wrap up this segment about the Sheriff's Office and Dennis Reynolds, and time will tell, what happens with this lawsuit. I'm Crystal Graham with Augusta Free Press. I'm joined by AFP editor Chris Graham, who has been writing a lot about the Augusta County Sheriff's Office this week. Another story that came up this week, Chris, that you've written about relates to a TikTok video made by an Augusta County Sheriff's deputy who happens to be Black. And a lot of brouhaha was made over the fact that this officer apparently released this video while in uniform. I'm going to let you break down what happened, Chris, because there's a lot of back and forth between message boards on social media. And then Sheriff Donald Smith actually felt compelled to put out a statement and have this sheriff's deputy, a Black woman, actually, in a sense, apologize for a lighthearted video that she made.
Yeah, I'm not sure there's a lot of brouhaha, to be honest with you. I think there's a very small group of people who've been making an issue of this. They were successful in getting the sheriff to force an apology. So here's the story. The sheriff's deputy, her name is Shamika Spears, and she is a Black female sheriff's deputy here in very white, very red, politically, Augusta County. And Shamika she's someone who a lot of people would interact with. They don't like it when they interact with her because she's a patrol deputy, and a big part of her job is speed enforcement. So, if you see Shamika, you're probably not seeing her in your favorite situation. It's because she's pulled you over for speeding, and over the years, apparently, because of her job, there are people who, this, so you may not know about this if you're watching this video. You might not. There is a very popular local Facebook page called Spot a Cop, the official Spot a Cop on Facebook, and people use this page for lots of reasons. I mean, they'll point out it's just, the name indicates that it's to here. I saw a cop on the intersection of Rosser and whatever, beware, that kind of thing. I saw a state trooper on 81 here at exit 235. I mean, that kind of thing. But it's also used, I mean, this week a lot for reporting on the flooding in Augusta County with all the rains that were out there. I saw lots of pictures and videos of, flooded bridges and that kind of thing. So it's used for lots of public safety type things. But yeah, the discourse on here is not always above board. And Shamika posted a lighthearted 26-second video on Saturday after there was a mention of her being set up near the Wilson Memorial High School entrance on 250, basically. That area back towards the Woodrow, the Wilson Rehab Center, that the old WWRC, Wilson Middle School, Wilson High School, Wilson Elementary School, that area. Um, and so, but the person who wrote the post on Spot a Cop called her Shaniqua. And she pointed out that, hey, my name is not Shaniqua. I hear this kind of thing all the time. She has a name, Shamika, that apparently, folks over the years have made fun of. It's a very Afrocentric name. And so
Don't
she'll,
you also think, Chris, though, that it could potentially be the fact that some people intentionally
oh,
mispronounce the name?
that's totally it. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like I think of Kamala Harris when she ran for president, right? And so Donald Trump and his supporters basically called her any different pronunciation than the actual correct one throughout the entire campaign. And I think that it's possible that Shamika kind of felt like that's what they were doing to her, like intentionally mispronouncing her name.
Oh, absolutely no doubt about that. This is not an innocent mistake. And so she had some fun with it. And she could have lashed out, and I don't think anybody would blame her, but she didn't. I want to see, I want to read, and then not use. She did use a curse word in this, and I I use curse words like an artist does. So I'm not criticizing when I say that, but I don't want to use that here just because broadcast standards, whatever. So she said, and this is what she said. Um, Tell me as much as I'm on Spot a Cop, these hoes are still effing up my name. It was Shaniqua. That's what the person called her. Who's that? Because it's not me, she said. Lady said my name and everything on the traffic stop. Like, bro, you mean Shamika? Nice to meet you. She quit it. She finished the video. She's got really nice curly hair. And she kind of, was kind of vaping for, preening whatever for the camera. And she said, "These curls are popping though." It was a lighthearted way to say, "Stop saying my name wrong. Stop being racist." She was she didn't say what some of us would have said. Stop being crapheads. Stop being racist crapheads. Stop being Nazi crapheads. She was trying to be having fun with it. So I want to give you a timeline, and I know you're going to have questions about this. The timeline is the original post on Spot a Cop was I went to the timestamp 8:05 a.m. Saturday, May 10th. She posted her video at 2:27 p.m. on Saturday, so 6 hours later that same day. There are people the few people who've been critical of this video have tried to point out, well, she's driving down the road. You can look at the video. I mean, I've linked it on our website in the story that I wrote about this. You can see that she's sitting. There's cars driving by her. She's not
Mhm.
driving when she's doing this video. Um, but the initial response, so for like 2 days, so she posted this on Saturday afternoon. For 2 days, the comments on her personal TikTok page, there were people who were posting about it on Spotify. 98, 99% of people positive. Oh my God, she's right. People are mispronouncing her name. It's not unintentional. Basically, you go, girl. Okay.
Right. That's what I saw too. A lot of that positive
Yeah.
reinforcement, on all forms of social media. But anytime things go viral and, and it likely pushed from one side who, for one reason or another, perhaps because she's a Black woman, wanted to target her, then there are some negative comments that come up as well.
So we'll get into that. So I got an email. So again, I mean, I don't use TikTok. Maybe I should. Maybe, or we've talked about it. Maybe we should get on TikTok. I'm not a TikTok person. So a person emailed me, a lady named Helen Panel from and it turned out did some research, found her. She lives in Piney River in Nelson County. So not in Augusta County, not even really close to here. Um, she linked to the video and asked if there was, quote, a story in the making. Quote, I'm confused that a person serving the public will be allowed to post such things like call people names and doing the TikTok while driving. Well, one, she wasn't driving. She didn't call anybody specific by a name. But okay, so I wrote back to say, well, we'll look into it, whatever. That night, Monday night, the Augusta County Watch Facebook page posted a link to the TikTok video with a lengthy screed, that's my term, editorial term, blasting spears attached to it. I won't go into everything that they wrote, but essentially, this Augusta County Watch group, tisk tisk, the whole thing. Can't believe she would do this. Okay, I will read part of this. The term hoe, they misspelled it. They spelled it HOE. HOE is the garden implement. The word hoe that they're referring to is HO, which is just slang for um, whore. I mean, it's what it is. So it's a deeply offensive slang term used to demean women, often implying promiscuity. I know the people who run this page, they have mm, for them to act holier than thou is really funny. While its use in popular culture, particularly music, may sometimes be normalized, it remains highly inappropriate, especially in professional law enforcement contexts. At Augusta County Watch, we believe law enforcement officers should uphold the highest standards of conduct both on and off duty. Okay. Um, for context on who this Augusta County Watch Group is, I wrote this in a story. It's out there. One of the principals of this group is a guy named Scott Klein, who um, I first wrote his name in a story back in 2019. He was a part of an effort to smear Donald Smith during that 2019 reelection campaign for the sheriff with claims that Smith had been dishonest and uncooperative during a federal labor trafficking investigation. Now, I personally came to know Scott Klein in 2023. Uh, Crystal obviously was a very big part of this as well, but we took up at Augusta Free Press, took up the cause of trying to get access to audio recording of a closed session of the Augusta County Board of Supervisors, in which members of the Board of Supervisors discussed the resignation of a guy named Stephen Morelli, who was facing sexual harassment allegations from two county government employees at the time. When we found out that there was audio of this closed session, we tried to use the Virginia Freedom of Information Act to get access to that. We took the county to court. We appealed the lower court ruling denying us access. This played out over the course of several months, about 8 or 9 months. Scott Klein attached himself. He tried to make himself my best friend, which is fine. And as that court battle dragged on, he called me almost every day, sometimes multiple times a day, sharing rumors of impropriety in county government, really focusing a lot on the sheriff's office, to a point where if everybody's corrupt in this guy's mind, it made me think maybe there's something else going on with what he's trying to do. Maybe I don't know the veracity of what he was trying to tell me. It was from him that I first heard the name Dennis Reynolds. We did another video, Crystal, this week about the lawsuit filed by Dennis Reynolds, a former sheriff's deputy who is suing the county and Donald Smith personally for over $5 million regarding his forced resignation. Um, and Klein was the one who first told me about the whole situation with Dennis Reynolds 2 years ago. So I'm not commenting here on the merits of that suit, but I came to take what Klein had to offer me about corruption in county governments with a big old grain of salt. So that is sort of the backdrop of Augusta County Watch making an issue of this Shamika Spears video, Crystal. In my opinion, the Augusta County Watch effort to smear her is really just something to get at Donald Smith.
Well, it is, and then of course Donald Smith took the bait in a sense. He it was something that probably could have gone without any comment whatsoever. But some people are saying maybe it was an effort, him making an issue of this to deflect from the fact that the lawsuit had been filed against him, the same week. But essentially, he posted basically that we hear you. You've been heard. The situation will be addressed, and corrective measures have been implemented. I guess assuming that some kind of, that she's facing some kind of, uh, some kind of, she's facing some
Internal discipline of some
yeah,
sort, right?
discipline
Yeah,
of some
yeah.
kind, right? Yeah, sorry, I couldn't come up with the word there, but some kind of discipline there, for what she did. And then Chris, what accompanied his statements, because one thing about the sheriff's office is they post all of their news releases in addition to sending them out to the media by email. They post them to their own social media account, this one on Facebook. There was another video that was posted with that.
Yeah, yeah. Shamika Spears herself, just decided, or depending on what you'd believe, it felt like to me a hostage video. It was a 2 minute plus video where, I mean, I won't read everything she said, but essentially she apologized, and so that felt like a forced apology. Let's just say what it is. And I mean, here we are in a week, Crystal. We've done other reports this week, other, we've commented here on other podcasts this week about two pretty important things involving the sheriff's office. One, you mentioned we've talked about here, even on this podcast, the lawsuit filed against Donald Smith by a former employee alleging that the former employee was forced to resign his job and has been prevented from getting other jobs by Donald Smith, and we'll know more about that in the next few months as that case plays out. The other being the death of a man in custody of a Augusta County Sheriff's deputy that we're not getting any answers on. No, nothing is being said publicly at all about how this man died. It's been 11 days as we're recording right now. So there's all that going on, and the big issue to Donald Smith that he will comment on is uh, his black female patrol officer making a lighthearted video. And a couple of people called the sheriff's office to complain, and he makes her apologize, and he's going to reprimand her some way internally. Um,
Well, he did say also in his statement regarding the issue, that she was trying to add humor, not to offend or disrespect anyone, and also that she has a good heart, and her comments weren't meant to mock or belittle anyone. That's what he said in his statement. But he said, of course, that words matter, and we recognize the importance of maintaining trust with our community. We will do better and are committed to learning from this experience. So, like you said, Chris, some kind of discipline. Maybe the discipline was simply don't do it again and do this, as you called it, this hostage video, apologizing to the community. So I think that Shamika herself said, "Look, I'm a personable person. I apologize to the community. I apologize to anyone that I offended." And she said, of course, she apologized to the sheriff, Donald Smith, as well. Um, the video was not intended, to offend anyone, she said.
I will say that, okay, I spent way too much time this morning, early this afternoon, as we're recording Friday afternoon, reading through, and I want to say I read every comment on the sheriff's Facebook page to his lengthy screed. It was over 750 as of like a noon today. So, on top of that, I didn't count how many comments were on Shamika Spears' TikTok video. There were a
Mhm.
few hundred of those. There were just a few comments on the Augusta County Watch. I think I've used this number. I'll use it again. 98 or 99% of the comments were "You go, girl." I mean, it was just,
Right.
it was like basically, we got your back. I mean, I'm talking, and there were lots of people whose names people would recognize, business leaders in this community. I know Brian Edwards, a former Waynesboro police officer, former Waynesboro school board member, praising her and her work and her work ethic. I mean, there were a relative few who raised issue. Um, to me, it's pretty obvious why they raise issue. I mentioned here, it's a political thing. These people don't like Donald Smith. They used her to get to Donald Smith. Donald Smith fell for the bait, maybe. Either he just wasn't smart enough to see that it was bait to get him to do something, or he used it as an opportunity to deflect from the dead man in the back of a police cruiser on May 5th, and from the lawsuit filed against him a couple of days ago. So whatever
Now,
the
I would
case,
also just say, Chris, the other possibility is that it is outright racism. That people are intentionally, using mispronouncing her name as a way to discredit her, much the way they did Kamala Harris, as I said in the beginning. During the presidential campaign, and
I
it is very possible that also played into it, and perhaps that's why she felt like she needed to respond, in the fashion that she did. But my guess is this is just a gut feeling, is that people are going to continue to go on the Spot a Cop page and continue to mispronounce her name, all to kind of egg this whole situation on.
Well, yeah, and the mispronouncing, writing her name down wrong, various versions of Ebonics versions of her name. I mean, it's offensive, and that's offensive on one level. But to me, it's even more offensive that there are people who are then taking her defense of herself, a lighthearted defense of her that she offers for herself, and then trying to get her in trouble for that. That's almost reinforcing that it's not almost, it's reinforcing the original racism. This is, I mean, this is the high tech lynching, is what you could call it. I mean, I'm using Clarence Thomas terms from the 1980s, but I mean, you're using social media, you're using a few people calling the sheriff's office to get put the black woman deputy in her place. This is this is not a good reflection on Augusta County, even though it's just a few people. I'm going to I want to emphasize that it's just a few people who are doing this, but they got the sheriff to apologize. They got the sheriff to make her apologize. It's not a good look on Augusta County, Crystal.
Well, you do have to remember that Augusta County is what, 90% conservative Republican. Is that what
It's 75% conservative
it feels
Republican,
like?
but it's 95%, but it's 95% white.
Yeah, and
And
so
and
that's yeah, you're right. That plays a factor,
it
for
plays a
sure.
factor, unfortunately, in this situation. And so I mean, there was one prominent business person that on almost every, and not, no, I shouldn't say almost every. There were maybe 20 or 30 different posts that were supporting Shamika Spears in this, and this business person would always write, "I've got your back, Deputy Spears." On every positive comment, this business person did that, and I just want to reinforce that here. We got your back, Deputy Spears. I mean, and I'm as an Augusta County native, I want to apologize that she had to apologize. It's ridiculous that this is the case. But you know,
Well, I
uh,
hope this is the last of it. I hope that, one, I hope that that there was no true punishment for her other than the video, which again should not have been necessary. This seems like a lot over something so minor. A lot was made of it for whatever reason. But again, I hope this is the last of it. And just yeah, like you said, Chris, the majority of people overwhelmingly were saying, "I've got your back." And so it's always frustrating when a few people can twist the right arm to elicit some kind of response and make it seem like it's a bigger issue than it actually is. So keep up with this. Hopefully there are not follow-ups on this. I'd be disappointed in our community if if that is the result. But hopefully Shamika can move on and do her job and continue giving out tickets and doing patrols and doing her job. It's not an easy one, and it's certainly no one likes to be pulled over, but it's not her fault that you're getting pulled over, right? So
don't
uh,
drive fast. And I want her to be able to also do some TikTok videos and have some fun with it. As
absolutely. And we're not
because
on TikTok, like you said, but by following the viral TikToks that you see from time to time, the people who shoot up to fame from one video or from two videos or something like that. Like you said, life is hard enough. Her job is hard enough. So let her have a little bit of fun, right?
what I'd say, and my last thought on this is, I mean, having watched a few of her videos now, I think it's fun, but also it personalizes. I mean, how many people, automatically just think of, I don't trust cops, I don't like cops, I don't like any. You can see that she's just a real person, just like we are, and we need more of this kind of thing, not less. I mean, more of putting sheriff's deputies, police officers, whatever the case may be, in a humanistic light. And she's to me, this is something that should be encouraged more, and not discouraged. And and for the people tisking and policing her language, I mean, whatever. Get over yourselves.
So if you haven't seen the videos or you haven't been following the story, you can certainly go to augustafreepress.com and you can read a little bit more about the story. We broke it down pretty well for you, but you can hear Shamika's videos for yourself and you can weigh in with your own comments on that as well. And like you said, Chris, there were sure a lot of comments on these things. So I'm glad that you finally did write a story on this because people were definitely talking about it. As you said, the one post had 750 comments, another one had over 500 comments. So, again, the overwhelming majority was in support of her, but I'm glad that you could kind of break it all down for people who might be coming in kind of late to the conversation or may have just seen Sheriff Smith's, um, you know, basically comments after the fact, regarding the situation. So for Augusta Free Press, I'm Crystal Graham. Chris Graham, thanks for breaking this down for our readers.